Welcome to the Jazz Ranger. I'm JohnBerry555, and today I'm reviewing the 5th episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The episode is called Through the Lens of Time. So, the premise of this episode is that basically the Enterprise is assisting in an archaeological expedition, mainly by providing support from orbit as Chapel, Dr. Korby, along with La'an, Spock, Junior Medical Officer Gamble, or Ensign Gamble I should say too, who I'm going to talk about a bit more, along with Ortegas' brother, and I think that's everyone on the server as well. La'an and Spock show up a bit later after they figure out that what they're looking at is a lot bigger than they need. And of course it's a small team because the local inhabitants are only giving a permission for a small team, though that does change by the end of the episode. But from the start of the episode before the title, when it's revealed that Gamble had been asking Mbenga to be allowed to go on a away team 6 times, and that he's super excited for that, I'm like, oh no. We've learned too much about him. He's not gonna make it. And I was right. But we also have the classic Red Shirt dying as well in this episode, just not on the planet. But it is thanks to Gamble. Context. They go into basically this thing, they're not sure exactly what it is, thinking maybe it's a temple or something, but anyhow, Gamble picks something up and it explodes, and so he's sent back to the Enterprise for medical treatment. But turns out he's now infected by some creature, some entity, Pelia. She's convinced that whatever this entity is extremely old, older than her, like one of the oldest things in the universe, and is pure evil, malevolent. They end up, based off of what they find in the temple, calling it a Vesda. But there's some connection between these entities known as the Vesda and the Gorn, because at one point, while trying to treat Gamble, who is somehow brain dead but still alive and talking, Captain Patel enters the sick bay because apparently something's reacting, and the theory is that the Hogong DNA is basically it's triggered by the Vesda's presence, and she attacks him. So my theory is that there's some connection between the Vesda and the Gorn, but also too on the planet. There's some timey-wimey stuff, or not timey-wimey, but dimensional-wimey stuff going on, and with effect preceding cause, yada yada. But the main thing is, as there's a point where Spock is, investigating the stuff, and they find more orbs like what Gamble had touched earlier, and the creature remind me a bit of the Gorn. So my theory is that there's some connection between the Vesda and the Gorn. Perhaps the Gorn has some pretty old spacefaring stuff, and the Vesda may have been basically an evil sect of them. Because we know the Gorn have some society based off of the original series. And they're not just pure monsters, despite how the Federation may be viewing them at this time. My theory is that perhaps there was maybe 2 types of Gorn. One who were more driven by instinct, and the other who was maliciously trying to expand and all that. It's a real theory, probably incorrect, but seems like the Gorn, in terms of where the Vesda are at least going to be allies to the Federation. And at the end, the planet's local inhabitants agreed with Starfleet to set up a joint security perimeter. But something I also want to mention with that is that I recently watched a Low Reloaded video where he talked about basically the different strengths of the different factions in Star Trek, and specifically the military. And the big thing with the Federation, his conclusion is that they're alliance builders. And this episode is that they build trust with the local community, and it allows them to gain their trust and eventually have a presence. The Federation you can generally trust not to stab you in the back, after all. But like I said at the start of the episode, Gamble, he does not survive this episode. He escapes the brig, because that happened, and he kills his guard, the red shirt that gets killed, and then he goes to engineering and takes Scotty, Sam, and Pelia hostage. And of course, we know Scotty's gonna be alright. We know Sam is gonna be alright. Though I love how every time they put him in mortal danger, because it's just we the audience knew, but he doesn't know. I just love that. But Pelia, we don't know. But Mbenga comes in and that distracts him. Gamble, well, not really Gamble's body inhabited by the Vesda life form distracts it long enough for Pelia to shoot him in the back. And then Scotty puts this thing back in the orb and transports it to nowhere. At first I thought that meant he just transported the entity and didn't materialize him, but didn't keep it in the Pato buffer, but it is still in the Pato buffer for the transporter, which is going to be a problem because at the end of the episode, Mbenga's making call to Gamble's family, probably to explain what happened. However, the computer screen flashes to a different language. It's describing the Vesda life form a little bit, but it flashes to a different language, the same language that we saw in that building on the planet. I'm nervous that the Enterprise might be infected now by this Vesda life form, and that's going to cause problems. But before we get to that, let's actually talk about what's going down on the planet. So, the 6 characters we have on the planet, they do get separated, but they're still in the same room. They're just in different dimensions of the room and causes happening after effect. Like, Spock accidentally cuts himself, but he doesn't realize he cut himself. He doesn't remember it, but then he cuts himself. And all that. There's also some Chinese writing in there, so what's going on there? There's a lot of mysteries, and that's what this episode really is. A bunch of mysteries of what's going on the planet. And also, too, it's dealing with a little bit of the tension regarding, I know how Spock and Chapel used to be together. Now it seems like Lon and Spock are getting close together, but there's tension between Korby and Spock. And by the way, they're the ones who are paired together. By the way, the people who are working the best together in all this, it's Lon and Chapel, which I would say makes sense. They don't have any ill will towards each other. Meanwhile, Uhura and Ortegas' brother, well, they clearly are growing closer and I think are attracted to each other, so that's creating some romantic tension between them. I still think that's what they're doing there, and I hope they continue that going forward. But with all that said, I think this was a really good episode. I think it introduced what I think is ended up going to be the big bad of the season with the Vesda, and they're going to have a connection to the Gorn somehow, so keeping that plot thread going from the earlier seasons. And then, of course, we eventually will know, because of the original series, how the Gorn part of this will end. And maybe the stuff going with the Vesda is what will maybe allow the stuff with Kirk and the Gorn in the original series to be actually able to happen, which I think would be a really interesting way of doing that. So I really hope they can continue developing that plot line, at least what I'm thinking is going to be the plan. I could be totally wrong, and we'll find that in the next couple episodes. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.